All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Sebo?
Well, you wanted to have a fitness conversation, which is going to be refreshing. I'm done with finals, so I can kind of mentally recharge a little bit before tomorrow. And these allergies aren't helping, and this thick 90% humidity air is making it worse to breathe. But I'll do my best. And if I keep scratching my eye, there's something itchy in there too. So
Oh yeah, it should
yeah.
it should be fun because for some reason I couldn't sleep last night. I didn't fall asleep till like 4 a.m. So besides being tired, if I don't get a good quality sleep, I wake up incredibly stiff. So I got a headache brewing. I got a lot of stiffness going, but it's sun's out, guns out. Well, actually, I got to go fix my fence when we're done here. So we're just gonna riff on some fitness stuff because it's been a while and this is kind of easy. And what sparked this was I I'm very proud of myself for not flying off the handle, but there's a little work get together for of the wife's friends, and while we are sitting around talking to a couple of these guys, one of them is this really jacked dude that I'd met before, and I liked him, and we hit it off because we both like fitness stuff. Um, but sitting next to me was a younger kid who played, I think, guard. He played offensive line at Boston College and started. So that's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's not an insignificant Division I school. Um, but he was asking a lot of questions because he had had decent strength and conditioning coaching, but it was all geared towards football. It's like, okay, well, now I have to live real life, and I'm not 330 pounds anymore, nor do I want to be because I don't have to be, and that's not a healthy weight to walk around in.
Yeah.
When you're no longer an offensive guard. So he was asking questions, and then some of the things that bodybuilder dude said made me go, "What?" And the two that really jumped out at me that made me scratch my head and go, "Where did this come from?" But I will preface it with why I still respect the guy is he did point out, well, this is the difference between styles of training. Is I'm all about building mass, and you're about functionality, which is true. As you say, you train all your clients like athletes.
hmm
So even just the normal desk jockeys, you go into Samo's gym and you're going to get trained not with the same intensity, but with the same basic principle as he's training someone who wants to go, you know, play Division I ball somewhere. Um, but but one of the things he said was, well, the deadlift is an ego lift. The deadlift doesn't actually build muscle. And the kid was like, really? What? Because obviously they did a lot of Olympic lifting in football. That's a lot of how they were coached. And rather than getting into an argument that I didn't feel like getting into, I pointed out that, well, what the deadlift does that is beneficial is it basically engages and strains every muscle in your body except for your pecs. Pretty much every muscle in your body is going to strain, is going to engage either for stability or for the movement.
Well, from experience, here's how you know a muscle is activated that you wouldn't think is activated otherwise. Injure the muscle. So when I was recovering from my pec tear, you thought, oh, well, you'll be able to push in deadlifts really, really quickly. No, don't. They're still activating
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise, they're all these structures are holding basically your arm bone in its socket
Mm-hmm.
as you basically picking up a lot of weight. So that one actually slowed me down a little bit on one that it shouldn't have surprised me, but at the same time, I was like, oh, I could push a little harder on that one, which I could, just not as much as I thought I could. No, but you're right. Everything is activated at the same time. Uh, get to your punchline, and then I will go into this because there's some nuance to this conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's just look at the movement. And much like how um much like how we try and find like New York Times or something for a contrary opinion. Uh, I- I'm I'm just gonna mute this so that I don't trigger you too bad. But I went to Mark Ripito because
Why you gotta do this to me the
just
day before my surgery?
for the same reason I go to the New York Times to make my point if I want to. I won't have the sound on, but I am slightly petty. So I went to a channel called The Art of Manliness, which I discovered like over a decade ago, which is a pretty cool blog and channel. And he's teaching this guy basic barbell strength. And here is him teaching the setup to the bar. And despite how annoying he can sometimes be, I still use his basic deadlift teaching cues when I'm teaching someone to deadlift because I think they're pretty good. You know, they're pretty simple. Set up on the bar, get it right over the middle of your foot. Do not move that bar. When you reach down to grab that bar should not move. It needs to stay stable. And uh and then once you set up on the bar, then you get your body into position, you create tension, you pull off the floor, right? And just looking at the movement, and he's just got, let me fast forward a little bit here. You know, he's just got a plate on each side, but just looking at the movement, I scratch my head and I say, how can you say this is an ego lift? How can you say this isn't building muscle?
I'm dying here already. Let's pause it.
I know you're dying already
No,
because
no, no, no. I'm dying from something that you probably. Oh, go back like a couple seconds where you can
uh
see both his feet. Okay, you can see both his feet now.
yeah.
You notice one foot is turned out more than the other?
Hmm.
That's killing me. Come on.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
sorry. And it's
Um,
also pronating, but you know.
yeah. Yeah. Well, he tells them pronate slightly, is toes out slightly, is actually what
No, no,
he.
pronate is collapsing of the instep.
Oh, you're right.
Pronating
Out is.
is a rotational
Yeah, yeah,
motion.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That okay. I'm discombobulated. Anyway,
Yeah.
and then you're pulling the bar up your legs. You're finishing. Um, I also like his cue of it's chest out, but you're not pushing your chest out. It's really you're locking your hips into a neutral posture, and then back down you go until you're in the basically the exact same starting position you were in. So just looking at that movement, there's the movement, and then where do you get the idea that that's not building muscle? I'll set aside the quibbles I have with the way Ripito teaches there, but the leave that for a moment. Let's just get your thoughts here.
All right. I got a much more handsome example of that on my computer here, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah, that's maybe I'll get that queued up in a second. But the anatomy of a okay, so here I put up think again because I wanted a book up there about thinking not in binaries and the oughts and thinking of the is. So here's the reality. Any muscle, or excuse me, any exercise that you do with any degree of intensity, and especially one you maybe not be used to, is going to build muscle. And anything you do long enough without varying the intensity or the tempo or the range of motion or enter X variable that makes the same exercise more difficult for you is going to plateau on muscle gain. Now, where bodybuilder guy is a little bit right, well, he's wrong about just an ego lift. Can be every lift can be an ego lift. Uh, if you do it to the ego over your ability, right? But no, it's where he's correct about deadlifts is when it comes to hypertrophy, typically again, take into account what I just said about anything that challenges you in any of these ways. You get most of the signal from what we call the eccentric part of the lift. The eccentric part of the lift is the muscle lengthening. A, a deadlift by competition standards, powerlifting. A deadlift, by the way, most people do it for total body strength exercise, which is what the football player would have been doing,
Hmm.
is almost 100% concentric. You pull the weight from the floor and then you drop it down. You're not typically doing it in an eccentric manner. You're creating complete body power, complete body strength without that slow eccentric lengthening of the muscles. So every muscle is pulling, is contracting. Even the stabilizers are contracting. The the power generators like your glutes and your hamstrings are uh, contracting. So everything is shortening. The lengthening part of the lift is actually not almost, if you do it competition wise, is non-existent. You just drop the bar and then you reset. And if you're doing it in the typical football workout, it's the same thing. They're mainly concerned about that. Will that build muscle? Yes. Every time you stimulate the muscle, you have chance of growth if you feed it properly and get proper sleep. But it is not as efficient at building muscle as the slow eccentric work, which you see bodybuilders do a lot of, which is that pull the bicep curl up and then slowly lower it down. Pull it up and then slowly lower it down. Arnold was famous for it. He would defend the cheek curl because
Hmm.
everybody's like, oh, it's a cheek curl. He would do his reps nice and slow, but then when he couldn't do any more, he'd fling it up and then slowly lower it down. And everybody's like, oh, you're cheating because you flinged it up. But instinctively, he knew it was that slowly lowering it down that did the most work. So if he
Hmm.
could squeeze out a couple what we call negative reps, he's going to get that bigger hypertrophy. Now, the reason why you get that is the nervous system is firing to pull the weight up, which is a signal to build muscle. And the contractile units, their ability to do so is a signal to build the muscle. But the slow way down, think of the contractile unit in inside the muscle as kind of like a ratchet system where it kind of spiders its way up. Well, when it lets it out and you're trying to control it, it's almost like ripping those cords away from each other, and it rips away, regrips, rips away, regrips. Think of your fingers if you were to go down a hill that way. You're holding, and your fingers rip away, but you end up regripping. How painful that is for your fingers, right? That's what's happening in there. And so you're damaging that myosin and actin a lot, which sends another signal that says, give us protein, which actin and myosin are two different proteins. They're the ones that ratchet against each other. And so this muscle damage is the signal to get the biggest density of change. So he's correct. It's not the best way to rapidly build muscle, but he is incorrect in that it won't build muscle and it's only for ego.
Hmm.
That's one way of thinking about it where he's correct. Now, plateaus. This is where it gets a little more nuanced.
Hmm.
If if you are trying to build bigger glutes, bigger hamstrings, more attractive hamstrings, bigger latissimus dorsi, all of the things that we would associate with the deadlift, eventually doing all this single joint or slow eccentrics in breaking up the body parts, eventually you're going to plateau out on pure strength because it's not, it's the better way of damaging the muscle to get more muscle. But once you get the strength gains from that extra muscle, it is not the best way to build strength because now you need to bring the nervous system into it. So you're going to eventually plateau if you don't do both. A little bit of both. The best bodybuilders in the world, and I'm going to bring up a picture of one here who would disagree with your friend on deadlifts because I know it's one of his 10 exercises he thinks should, if you had only 10 exercises, you should keep it. This is C-Bum, Chris Bumstead, who has been Mr. Olympia more times than Jesus. But this is classic physique too. So the he if you're saying, oh, he's not as big as Ronnie Coleman or something. No, this is classic
Yeah.
physique,
Well,
which I'm glad they brought that back
yes.
in. I had a side by side with him and Arnold to compare that, but it's uh it's why he's where he is because he periodizes his programs
Hmm.
where in his off season, which every sport should have some bit of off season, right? Because they're stressful on your body. He hit when a lot of bodybuilders just bulk and cut and bulk and cut and bulk and cut. He bulks, increases strength and power, bulks some more, and then cuts. So it's a multi-part process, not just a two-part process. And so he's actually increasing his potential for muscle gain later by increasing his ability to produce force in that short term. It's the old sharpening your axe story.
Mhm.
You know, the lumberjacks, the one working all day, young guy, and then the old man taking his breaks. An old man had twice as much lumber, and the young man said, "You must have cheated. What were you doing on those breaks?" He said, "I was sharpening my axe." That's where I would disagree
Yeah.
with your uh
Well,
assessment.
and part of the disagreement from me too was, and I kind of wiggled this into the conversation too about uh RDLs. And it's like, oh yeah, those are pretty good. And I'm like, dude, it's just a slight variation of the movement.
Well, but that's where my explanation comes in because
Exactly.
when I'm in a tissue development stage,
Hmm.
I do more RDLs.
And that is
That's the front view. I'm just bringing up some visuals for people that want to see the musculature of the
yeah.
deadlift. I mean, okay, so this is good because it's basic. You have to say this is not a bodybuilder physique, right?
Hmm.
This is someone's depiction, which is not too inaccurate, of what a power lifter looks like under their fat.
Yeah.
That's a lot of muscle.
Hmm.
That is a massive amount of muscle. The reason power lifters don't look as strong as bodybuilders is because they got a big insulated layer over that because eating is part of their job.
I've been rewatching season 1 of Physical 100, and I forget about the Atlas test. That I forgot about that challenge and the Korean strongman champ, and then the other dude who was an Olympic coach for I think skeleton, and they held that freaking 50 kilo boulder for 2 hours.
Yeah, 50 kilos, 110, 110 pounds.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch. But that is one of my quibbles with the video I showed. And one of the reasons I wanted to show it is because you shared a video a long time ago that I didn't understand at the time. I was like, I don't get it. And you thought it was hilarious. And it was back when the movie Downfall had come out and people were making all of these 999 videos with and changing the closed captioning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and yours was about low bar squats.
Well, it
And
was
because
it was more specifically about how Ripito teaches the
it,
squat
it,
with his hip drive. Yeah.
exactly. And you were kind of seeing the same thing there. And if I had had the sound on, you would have heard it more because he admonishes the guy one, he Ripto wants a narrow stance, and two, don't drop your hips. So basically, what he's teaching is that the only way to do a deadlift is to do an RDL. Well, no, that's the proper way to do it like that. It's the same way. I don't even remember the guy's name anymore because I stopped following him. And I'd mentioned this to you a while back. Is man, this guy used to have really good videos, and I would watch him. You know, when I was training, especially when I first started out at the box gym, because I was always looking for different coaching cues. Because I get it in my head of this is how I explain something. That doesn't always work for everyone. It's like I explain it to them and I don't get it. What do you mean? And I'm like, well, I got to find another way to explain it. So I'm always looking for other coaching cues. And this guy had a really good video on front squat, high bar squat, low bar squat. Here's how you properly do each one. Here's how each one is different on the body. Well, a few years later, and it was you should only ever do, I think it was high bar. There's no reason to do any other squat. Just do the high bar squat. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You made all these really good points a couple of years ago, and it had turned out as he had gotten bigger, he had hooked up with this other big YouTube fitness guy whose focus was all on one particular thing. And so now he's forgetting all that other stuff. So I was like, well, wait a minute. That stuff didn't suddenly become wrong. It's just now your focus has narrowed.
Yeah, well, and this is again something I will very much talk about sports specificity. If I'm a bodybuilder, I train different than I would if I'm a 3 times a week just trying to maximize my fitness,
Hmm.
right? Because if I've got 3 days to train and I've got an hour each time and I'm maximizing my fitness, there is going to be a little bit more focused, a little bit, selection of exercises that are bang for the buck. High bar squat would be one of them because it translates to real life really well. It allows you to get the foot positioning as narrow as possible for a squat. Uh, and again, which to me translates to real life better, but also it's going to save your low back in the long run. So, and it distributes the force front and back. It's in between the low bar back squat and the front squat. So you're able to get a little bit of the benefit of both in one exercise. If I'm a bodybuilder, I'm high bar squatting one squat day. I'm low bar squatting one squat day. I'm doing RDLs. I'm doing deadlifts. I'm doing, leg extensions, sometimes wide, sometimes narrow. I'm doing hamstring curls, sometimes toes pointed, sometimes not toes pointed. Sometimes, in this situation, I'm doing sumo lifts. I'm doing this. I'm doing that because I'm trying to get as much isolation as I can in all these areas because my volume is going to be through the roof. I'm doing 3 hour workouts. I'm working out 6 days a week, sometimes seven, depending on how close I am to a competition. And I am maximizing the volume per muscle ratio with a long period of time and some steroids. But
Sometimes it's HGH, you know?
well, most of them are doing in conjunction, but
Yeah.
but no, it's because they're actually splitting everything up to increase the volume. Whereas if I have limited time, I'm going to try to combine as much as I can so I
Yeah.
can spread out the volume as much as possible. So more total body exercises, more prioritizing the biggest compromise exercises I can. Uh, so it's a different sport. Now, if I'm a power lifter, different sport. I'm going to find the best deadlift for me, and I am going to maximize the number of repetitions at a high intensity I can. And then I'm going to have a whole bunch of them at a low intensity because I am going to repeat that motion as many times as I can in my life without destroying my back.
Hmm.
And so the nervous system is constantly being reinforced and if properly periodized in a way that limits the tissue damage.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's sport specific. For most of us, we just want to be fit and the best version of ourselves. So you find the maximum amount of time you can spend on it, and depending on what that number is, we'll find the best splits for you.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, and there's also an element of
I wanted to say something about body position. I'm working on a new thing for our sponsor, Real Fitness. Now that I'm gonna have a summer to do these, and as soon as I can squat down to do these kind of things, uh, on finding the best position for you, starting with the human being, not the exercise.
hmm.
Because I think
Hmm.
if we master some principles on human movement, then you can actually do any exercise. If you master the body weight squat, which my squat video is good, I think this is going to be a complement to that video, not a replacement. If you master the human squat, the difference is where the bar is or where the weight is. So if I mastered that squat, I can squat down to the bar and grab it in front of me and adjust my body around that
Hmm.
versus saying, oh, well, I have to have my hips up here. But typically, what I do, coach, I think this is in my deadlift video. I didn't know what timestamp it was, or I would have. It's a 20-minute video. I can't listen to that while you were talking and get it in the right place. But the way I usually start with somebody is I'll have already taught them how to hinge, and I will say hinge as far as you can till you feel a little tension in your hamstrings, then squat the rest of the way down, and then roll the bar into your shin. So that way it's not, oh, well, this needs to be over this part of my foot because I don't know how much you're going to have to squat yet because it depends on how far you can
Hmm.
hinge. So and it accounts for different leg lengths of tibias, different femur lengths, different all of that. So say a little bit out in front, hinge as far as you can towards it, squat the rest of the way so you could grab the bar and then pull it back into your shins.
Yeah. Mark Ripito would tell you you're wrong. It's a good thing I didn't have the sound on there because one of the things he says
Well,
in
he's
that
trying to make them
video,
hinge it all up. And if they
exactly.
can't hinge all the way to the bar, where's the flexibility going to come from?
One of the things he says in there is that the deadlift isn't a squat with the bar in front of you.
Well, it's not because
Um,
you do start with the maximum amount of hinge, which I
mhm,
wouldn't do in a squat.
mhm. But it is a very similar movement. And I've uh when you're trying to coach someone who is just an a casual, I want to be in better shape. I tend to coach the squat, the deadlift, the barbell hip thrust all together because of the similarity of the movement and because I need to get your hips moving because you're probably sitting down way too damn much. And so as part of that hinging and getting that movement, I want to simplify the process. And because your foot positioning is pretty similar through all of those movements. And it is a matter
Unless you're
of
pulling sumo,
unless you're pulling, well, that's why your standard textbook, vanilla
conventional.
deadlift,
Yeah.
high bar squat, barbell hip thrust, all of that is pretty dang similar. You're just shifting the load, and so you're kind of shifting the force vector. Um, moving on, unless you have any
Yeah.
more about the
Well,
deadlift.
yeah, just on that note, one of the important things about the deadlift, this is why I do utilize it, is I mean, I have clients I don't deadlift because they've got history of, you know, already having bulging discs in their back, or they're just not comfortable with it. And if they're
Yeah.
not comfortable with it, they're never going to push themselves hard enough to get the maximum benefit out of it. All there's all kinds of reasons not to do it, but do that on a case by case basis.
Mm-hmm.
And if the only reason is they're uncomfortable with it, well, find a way to be a good coach and make them comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. But I do utilize it a lot because it has a lot of bang for your buck. And you said sitting a lot. I say total body posture. Because if you really break down a deadlift, the weight is pulling you out of posture. And your job is to pull the weight in until your body's in posture. So that's it's as simple as that. You're talking about
Mm-hmm.
the shoulders back and chest out. It's not hooking your chest out, it's retracting your shoulder blades into good posture.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's contracting your glutes till you have a neutral hip. It's all of those things. And basically, if you do lower it slow, which I'll do eccentric deadlifts with people, if you do lower it slow, you can feel it just wanting to pull you out of posture, and your job is to control it on the
Mm-hmm.
way down. So it is the ultimate postural exercise.
Speaking of shoulder blades, the other thing he said that so the deadlift part, I mean, I can get that. I can step back and go, why would you say something like that? Okay, I can see where you're coming from of an ego lift that's not building muscle, and
Well, and
and you kind
from
of showed that.
because you're a bodybuilder, there's risk reward.
Yep.
And it might not meet because of your own personal anatomy, your risk reward profile for maximizing your goals.
But then he said the lat pull down is a waste of time because it doesn't build your lats.
Well,
And
let's look at lats.
I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from. I have a guess, but
Now, did he give alternatives?
um no, I don't think he did. I'm trying to remember. There were adult beverages involved, so I'm trying to remember. Um,
Well, that's going to hurt his gains more than a deadlift.
well, on my part more than his, but
No.
uh,
Us normal people, you can get away with it, but if you're a competitive bodybuilder,
yeah,
you're over the natural threshold of what your body wants to hold on to, so anything can
right.
get in the way. Okay, so this is the latissimus dorsi for those that can see it. You see the attachment points all the way from on the bottom end, the thoracolumbar fascia, which is that little diamond down there, all the way up the spine to about the height of the shoulder blades. And then all of that attachment goes to one smaller attachment on the front side of the arm. And I brought another visual to show that it actually attaches to the front side of the arm, not the back side, which is important when you're discussing latissimus dorsi because it actually rotates you out of posture, which is sounds weird because it's working really hard during the deadlift too, but it's working in conjunction with your trapezius muscles, which pull you
Hmm.
into posture. So it stabilizes the spine, is one of its movements, but it also rotates the arm internally and downward and pulls the arm bone down. So if it's not just pulling it straight down, it actually rotates like this. So if you're going to say you can do an exercise to maximize that motion, better than a lat pull down, I would say you're probably correct because you would start up here and it would actually sweep and rotate as it came forward, not just pull down. Maybe some sort of pullover exercise would be good for
I,
that.
I, I, I think he said that don't do pull downs, do pull ups,
Oh, so he was saying a pull up is better than a lat pull.
which what, and that's saying that I don't have a problem with. Saying that the lat pull down doesn't build your lats, it's uh maybe I'm a dummy and correct me if I'm wrong here, Professor, but it's the same motion. It's just down versus just
Well,
a matter of
he might
how
be.
the weight is moving.
This is a language thing. I wish I was in this conversation because
Mhm.
lat pull down to some is grabbing the cable handle with an overhand grip and pulling down like you're doing a pull up. Lat pull down to a bodybuilder, I would guess he's talking the wide grip with the handle turn downs and uh, now, I will say he would be correct if a lot of times online you see these wannabe life coaches say doing the overhand wide grip lat pull down is going to build your lats better than a chin up. This is being incorrect. Actually, the palms being rotated would actually lengthen the muscle because now the attachment point is right here, and that would allow for a greater pull down, greater range of motion of
Mhm.
that. So that would be where he is correct that it doesn't work it at all and it won't be good. No, that is incorrect as well. Because I
Well,
mean it is the prime mover, even in the wide grip where your arms are rotated out. It is the prime mover pulling that the whole the structure down. Now, as far as versus a pull up, what's your volume for the day? How
mhm.
many pull ups can you
Mhm.
do? I've got 4 by 12. Can you
Do,
do 4 by 12 pull ups?
do you have access to an assisted pull-up machine?
Hmm.
Because if not, well, that's really going to limit one, how many pull-ups you can do and how good your form is.
Yeah, and what's my tempo for the day?
Hmm.
Am I going to be able to do all 12 with a 1 second concentric? So pull up, 3 second eccentric, 1, 2, 3, pull back up, 1, 2, 3. Are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to maintain it? Are you gonna have the mental fortitude to focus on that? Well, you might be able to with the cable versus. Well, I was actually
And
surprised he took that one because that's usually a big fight with bodybuilders and CrossFitters.
yes,
Yeah.
and much like with the deadlift, and I actually brought this up in talking about pull-ups of how you stole my pull-up idea that I came up with when we were wrestling. Change your grip. What grip are you using in your pull down? That's going to change the profile as well. Um, one of the things he said that made me that I had to stop myself from saying you're doing it wrong then was lat pull downs don't build your lats, they build your traps. That is one of
How much are you leaning back?
exactly that is one of my big pet peeves in the gym is how much people lean back. All right, so you're basically doing a row that's straining your lumbar because you're leaning back so far. Okay. And actually, I'm gonna send this to you because copy. Where's the
I mean, you're getting some internal rotation, or excuse me, not internal rotation, downward rotation of the scapula, which the traps would
Mhm.
help with. But
Speaking of scapula, I just sent you a link here because this one we should share with sound because it is Eric Cressy. Okay. And I was looking for a lat pull down video and then I found this and I was like, you know what? This is the perfect one because it's Cressy. He's the shoulder guy. And so he's explaining what is happening in the movement pattern.
all right, start from the beginning, or
Yeah. Sound, Dingleberry.
yeah,
Okay, Boomer.
take two.
Lat pull down. We're going to set up in a lunge position with the side that we're working. That same leg should be back. Okay, so in this position, keeper's got a vertical shin on the front side.
Quick quiz: why should that side be back?
Because of the crossover.
Yeah, because the
Because
contralateral glute works with the latissimus dorsi on the side you're working.
so
So
that
that's
leg up is engaging
it's
that
stretching
the leg
the
there.
yeah. So it's creating the maximum stretch for the complex.
Glute activation on this side, little stretch on his hip flexors. He's going to reach right up, grab onto it. And as we goes into that lat pull down, the one thing I want you to really be cognizant of is not letting that humeral head pop forward. So you notice the elbow doesn't wind up a couple inches behind his body. Okay. Instead, it's just his lat turning on, and he's actually letting his shoulder blade come up a little bit in that top position. Not all the way, but enough so that we actually are moving the scapula into a little bit upward rotation. You'll also notice he doesn't extend as he pulls down, and he doesn't shoot into a forward head posture.
All right.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All
Yep.
right, it's actually harder to do in practice than that, but
and
that's all you
that's
need to know.
and that single arm sorry, accidentally went to the next video when I clicked over. So but the that single arm with the ability to rotate your hand like he did solves the problem I was talking about of being able to rotate that down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, if you really want to say what's the best way to work your lats and focus on them, yeah, the single arm cable pull like he just did there. Again, efficiency. Do you have time to do
Mm-hmm.
single arm work on both sides and be as efficient as possible? That baseball guy, he looked like a what, college age or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Taking care of that arm is his number one concern other than waking up in the morning, breathing and eating, right? Taking care of that arm is numero uno. So yeah, he's got the time because that's what he does. If I've got four people working out and I've got 3 times a week, an hour, maybe we'll do some lat pulls. I mix it up. We'll do some lat pulls one day. We'll do some pull ups another day. I do single arm, but I use the bands and we do it on a recovery day. So it's yeah, they all work the lats though. So to your guys' comment, lat pull downs do work the lats. Is it the best way? Actually, chin up grip, the reverse grip is better, and you can use the same, but you can use the cable and just flip your grip around and do that. Or like you said, which grip is best? Yes, all of them. What are you mixing it with? If I'm doing it in conjunction with bench press, I'm probably going to do the reverse grip. If I'm doing it in conjunction with, I don't know, overhead press, so I'm doing a superset, a complementary superset, I'm going to do overhand grip. There you go.
It's also important. You pointed something out that explains another one of my pet peeves about the lat pull down, which is where it connects in there, and it wants to pull that arm forward. And one of the things he talked about is that elbow positioning. One of the things Cressy was talking about. Well, one of the things that drives me crazy is if you're in a box gym, you will see elbows everywhere on a lat pull down. They're just going all over the place. And that's because they're allowing that rotation.
Yeah. Well, and this is where ego lifting comes in too, because if I scrunch everything forward like that, guess what I just did? engage my pecs. So now it's lats, pecs, and my body weight increasing the amount of weight I can do. So yeah, if you can't help but do that, you've got too much weight. If you can't help but do that on a pull up, guess what? Go get the cable and do some regular lat pulls at a weight you can handle. If your goal is to do as many pull ups as possible because you're in a CrossFit tournament, point A to point B, my brother. Just do something in your not doing pull up time to balance that out.
I'll yelp.
Yep.
Speaking of CrossFit, like I said, I've been rewatching season 1 of Physical 100. And there were uh a couple of things that really jumped out at me on this second watch. And one of them was, and I'm curious, so, if you encountered this in your training, in your professional training, of what is it? So in watching the one-on-one medicine ball challenge, one of the hardest things to teach kids who were like naturally scrappy, like kids who rolled around and wrestled, with their friends or with their brothers, was this. For whatever reason, the natural reaction when someone's grabbing hold of you is to reach over. Okay. Well, what you actually want to do, and for me, this was easy because once I learned it, it felt more natural. I was like, oh, no, this feels much better. You want an underhook grip. You don't want to reach back and grab their leg like this. No, underhook, because then you have more leverage. And then it's harder. You're way out here with your arm outstretched. Well, it's very easy for them to just pop that leg out because it's a heck of a lot bigger than your noodly little arm.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that's a mindset thing that you might, if you could have developed it naturally, but if you, it's fear overcoming what's right, because out in space and reaching in isn't as scary as putting yourself into tightness to gain position. And so if you're just reacting, I think most people would end up putting themselves in space in the initial reaction. So, but yeah, if you can worm into tightness and then come out with that underhook, you're going to definitely, that's the leverage game at that point. So I would probably say we took those scrappy kids you talked about and do an actual analysis on them. I would bet we would get a proportion of them that did the leverage game naturally and a proportion that did the reaction game naturally. And you might be right that more of them did the reaction game, but I bet you if we looked at their win-loss records amongst their friends, the leverage game people would be the top dogs. So it's not everybody's made to fight.
Yeah, and it is one of the reasons I think every kid should have to wrestle for at least 1 year. Put them on a team, whether it's youth wrestling when they're in elementary, or if you've got a middle school team, make them do it at least once. Because something else that you see in those medicine ball fights, if you've never watched wrestling or participated in wrestling, is how draining it is to go one-on-one like that. And one of the reasons is, and some of these, there's some real mismatches there, which was part of the fun of the Physical 100 matches, is it's the most you versus you can get, because you're going against someone who's your own weight. So you're basically going against yourself, and you're having to go all out. You are engaging everything as you push and pull against your opponent, who's basically you. So it is the most you versus you I think you can get. As well as it's just good learning to have your face rubbed into a mat every once in a while.
Well, and there's a point. There's I had to explain this to one of the younger kids uh, 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 about the moment that you realize you're out of juice in a fight is different than the moment you realize you're out of juice running a marathon
Mm,
or in a CrossFit workout or in your own workout just pushing. The moment you realize you're out of juice in a fight is precisely when your body is out of juice.
mhm,
The moment you realize it in all those other situations is when you want to stop. It's not out of juice yet. You're just getting to you get to the mental game before you get to being out of juice. In a fight where you're fighting for it's very equally matched, and you got all that adrenaline going, and several thousand people are watching you, or whatever, or if it's a real fight and you're fighting for your life, you've got that mental energy
mhm.
until your body just says, "I got nothing. Fuck you."
And that the element there that you talked about in the, the overhand versus the underhook is getting past that mental barrier, getting past that fear. And one of the things I was trying to find, and I could not find a clip of it, which was annoying, was Akiyama versus Silva in the UFC, not the Pride, their UFC fight. Um, because I went into that fight rooting for Silva because he was the most. I mean, he was basically the Bruce Lee of the UFC for a while because he was so unorthodox. He was the visual representation of Bruce Lee's idea of the style of no style. The way he would morph. So like Chuck Liddell versus Tito, you knew what you were getting because both of those guys were going to go into it and fight their fight or try to fight their fight. Silva was weird because he had a tremendous ground game, but that didn't mean he was going to take you to the ground. He might kick the crap out of you. He might stay at distance. He might screw with you with his hands, you know? And he kind of got into Akiyama's head in that fight with that unorthodox approach. But in looking for that clip, something I found that Akiyama was a master of, and you probably know other examples of people who would do this, but there's a particular judo technique where you go in and sweep the leg from behind. Well, to do that, you have to go into a punch.
Mm-hmm.
So in judo, you're not throwing strikes, so it's different. But the way Akiyama would do it is rather than backing off or ducking his head the way a boxer might when someone would throw a jab at him, is he would go into the strike. That takes a lot of getting past that mental barrier to then go into the strike and that way close the distance to sweep the leg.
Yeah, and that's a choice you make. I think at some point in your career, but hopefully if you're smart enough earlier in your career, because you're trade-offs, right? I'm gonna talk about my own as an example of this because it was very similar. He made this choice at some point. I am going to be vulnerable for a second to get the position I need to finish this without having to take too many strikes. So he made the choice of I'm going to take one to reduce the total. I hate leg kicks. Leg kicks are the worst. And I didn't grow up doing kickboxing. I've had high level kickboxing instructors, and their shins are like rebar, and it's mine were more conditioned than most, but not compared to someone who's good at that.
Yeah.
And there are, going by when I started that, there will always have been people that were so much better at that than me. So I was like, you know what? I'm a better wrestler than most kickboxers. One kick, that's all you get. So we drilled it. I never checked a kick. I leaned into a kick to get the takedown. So you're just at first you're wincing for that kick to come in, but after so many reps where you hate yourself, it just becomes natural. It was, I think Chris Lieben said it way back in the early days of Ultimate Fighter. He said, "There's a button here. When you hit that button, this happens." And and that's why I get so many knockouts when someone's punching me in the face, because this button goes. And there became a button when a shin would land on the side of my thigh that automatically put me in a shot, and I would scoop under, get the single leg or double leg if I could get it. It just began to happen. And you got to make that choice though, because you're eating one. Yeah, a checked kick doesn't hurt as bad as one just digging into the side of your thigh, but I only took one. Sexyama made that same choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be vulnerable for a second. I'm going to take a punch, but he better knock me out. Because if he doesn't knock me out, it's mine.
He's going to the ground, and I've got a good
because
ground game.
in throwing that punch, he gave me the advantage in taking him down. If he didn't want me to take him down, he would sprawl. And so that's it's a choice. And did it suck training? Did it suck doing it? Yeah, but also I can say I beat a kickboxing champion in front of a few thousand people. He kicked me once, and it's the hardest I've ever been kicked in my entire life. But he never hit me again, punch or kick. In fact, he was on his back the whole time. Or back, and then he rolled over, which was dumb on his part, because then I took his back. And it was over about 90 seconds later. I think he just made that choice. And that's a mental game as much as physical. Yeah, you can do, if you're willing, this is a whole the meta talk. If you're willing to make a sacrifice, you're more likely to win. Just like your reach over. That's a comfortable reaction. But you did it to sacrifice the rest of the conflict, basically. If you go for that tight underhook, you have to sacrifice for a second, because you're going to work hard to get there, especially if they're trying to keep underhooks.
Yeah. One of the other things I appreciated that I noticed more is that, because I remembered him being a great team leader when they split up into teams, but paying more attention now, I loved his methodology, and I texted you that he reminds me a lot of GSP, and I love GSP on The Ultimate Fighter as a coach of, yeah, I'm gonna push you hard, and we're gonna do what it takes to try and make you a winner in this sport, but I also want to make you a better person. And Akiyama was the same way in Physical 100 is, hey, we're gonna push ourselves, we're gonna give it our all, but remember, let's have fun out there. I'm like, holy crap, nobody else is saying that.
Yeah, and there wasn't a whole lot of that on season 2, except for I think Andre was like that, the tall white guy. He was a lot like that, but they didn't really showcase him a whole lot until he made it to the top 3. So
yeah. There's and you actually, or you didn't agree with me. You said Jerry Rice would disagree with me, which made me go, huh, is the other thing that jumped out at me in watching the medicine ball fights the second time through, it seemed to me that you could tell the difference between the people who really wanted to win and the people who were really worried about losing. And I think that, as a personal example, that's what sets you and me apart. That is why you went on and actually had professional fights, and all I ever did was train. Because I was so afraid of losing that I didn't push myself to go out there and try and win.
Yeah, I'm looking for the Jerry Rice quote. It's something to the extent of, the reason I was so good is my extreme hatred for losing or something.
Now, I think there's a balance there, and that, as you've talked about before, with the coach trying to amp you up of this, this guy's invading your home, he's going to murder your kids.
See, that's not about winning or losing. That was more about pure ridiculousness,
Yeah, but also your internal response to that is, I hate losing and I really want to win. So you
Yeah.
can really hate losing, but that can't overpower the one. I think you are so much better off if you have a positive drive. Yes, that negative, that I hate losing. There's definitely an element of that to high performing athletes, but I think even more than that, like Tom Brady's a good example of this. Of I'm a sixth round pick. Nobody gave me any chance. I'm going to prove it to everyone. You messed up by not picking me. So there was a major positive drive there, along with the, but the I really hate losing was below the damn it, I'm going to win.
Well, and I think this is a deeper debate on or deeper discussion on positive mental states because it's dopamine and serotonin, right? Dopamine motivates you for the action, serotonin allows you to be satisfied. If you hate losing so bad that you can't enjoy winning, you're not in a good space.
Yes.
If you enjoy winning so much you're afraid to try, you're not in a good space. If you hate losing so much you're afraid to try, then you're not in a good space. But uh, if you love winning and hate losing, I don't know. I'm trying to decide how to work this, square this circle. But
Yeah.
there's the healthy mind state going into it. If you can't if you can't be in a state where you can feel the negative energy from losing, but use that to develop a new dopamine response to try harder the next time, to train harder, to be more diligent with your diet, to whatever it is that it is, to study harder if you got a bad grade on a test. If you can't recycle that negative feeling from the losing into a positive motivation, that's why it's good to hate losing, because that you never get the motivation to not to it's the old saying, you show me a good loser, or you show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. The loss is this is how I'm analyzing school. I'm not there to get a job. I'm not there because my career depends on it. This is why I'm so much less miserable than all the other students there. I'm not there because it is my life path going forward. I'm there because I want to expand my skill set as a health professional. I think I have something unique to bring to the industry. And I'm one of those people that I can't be a specialist, but another way to go through life is you take a few things and get pretty good at them and then make them into one thing. And that's uniqueness. So that's that's why I'm there. But my grade is a reflection of what I learned.
Mm.
And if I don't get a good grade, I wasted time, I wasted effort, I wasted money. It's all of those things. So I need to feel bad about all that waste to keep motivating me to get a good grade. Otherwise, it's like, I learned a couple things. There's $5,000 gone this semester. What's the point in that? It's a reflection of what I've learned. It's a reflection of how hard I've tried. Maybe that's the key. If you treat it as if you're able to analyze what you put into it and understand it's reflected in the end result, not it is guaranteeing the end result or it's any of these other things, then I think that's more the healthy mindset.
Well, unless you have any other random fitness thoughts you wanted to go into, that sounds like a good place to leave it because we always try and end on a high note. And for once, we finally did because there's some genuine, damn good advice.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And
this,
it's just like the leg kicks thing. It's you got to make the choice because everything you do, if it's worth anything, is going to suck for a second. Like you had trouble making that jump to, I am putting myself out there in front of everybody and saying that Basically setting yourself out to fall flat in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is just public speaking. You got to do your presentation, and everybody's going to be watching, and some people are going to be rooting for you to fall flat on your face
Mm-hmm.
when you should be going out there saying, I did this prep. I am going to fight to where it shows. And then the rest is up to him, my opponent. Because if he prepped more and he's got more ability, then I lost. But I put everything I had into it. So that's life. Let's see if we can redo some nuts and bolts here. Same with the test. I prepped hard. I did this. I got good sleep. I, got my nutrition was on point. Show up for the test. Got a B. Damn it. What did I do wrong? Okay, there was a lot of memorization on this one. I studied more on a conceptual level. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's go. There you go.
There you go, indeed. Well, hopefully that helps someone with something, and that's why we always try and take these specifics, and even if we're talking something like fitness, okay, but it applies outwardly to the broader conception of life, which is complicated and can get messy.
Yeah, and then on those things that we broke down from a fitness standpoint, and you got a bodybuilder telling you something, or a power lifter telling you something, or someone just saying something that kind of gives you the eh. Even if you don't know what the right answer is, you can always say something extent of go, is that the whole picture?
Mm-hmm.
Could there maybe be more to it than that? I don't know. Maybe you're completely, absolutely right, but just seems a little off to me. And that's all. That's a good stance to have, because that gives everybody the chance to go look up the right answer.
Yep.
Yep. All
Actually
right.
do some digging and some thinking. All right. Well, we'll see y'all theoretically
Friday.
maybe Friday, probably Saturday for
Yeah,
some Wheel of Time.
there will be a different backdrop because I will not be able to sit like this for that long. I might be lying on my side. We'll figure something out. I've got long cables to work with stuff, and I actually found out it starts. I don't have to be there till the afternoon tomorrow, so I've got time to piddle around.
Oh, that's handy. As long as you're not lying on your side on a bearskin rug, because we don't need that kind of content.
Yeah.
Or maybe we do. We could use some clicks.
All right. Later, guys.